All right, so our industry presentation is going to be done by Kendia Laramore. She is the public relations officer for Whatchadoing.cam. So Kendia, you can introduce yourself.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Trevon, for inviting us to your meeting tonight. But I know we're all educated beings here, but you have to pronounce that correct. It's what you're doing. We have our dialect, and that is what makes this platform so 100% Bahamian, is that we did not try to speak properly with it. We wanted it to be something that Bahamians they are familiar with. We don't always speak proper unless we're in the front of certain persons or, it's necessary. But what you're doing, Cam, is the name of the platform. So I just wanted everybody to feel very comfortable in saying it that way. We do not have to say what should. So again, thank you for having us. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kendia Laramore, and I am the public relations officer for Whatchadoing.cam. You can go to the next slide, Trevor. So about the developer, he has over 25 years of entrepreneurial experience, and he is a Bahamian. His values are his core values are grounded in spiritual beliefs, and he is definitely a very humble and down to earth person. The platform is a small example of his philanthropic efforts. There's no gimmicks with him with regards to why this platform was created. His idea is basically to get Bahamians interested in sharing their work and their talent and have them compensated for it. Believe me when I tell you, there is no gimmicks. It's exactly what you see is exactly what you're going to get with this. So we can move on to the next slide. So you want to know what you're doing.cam. It is a live streaming platform. It is a marketplace for networking. You can go ahead and click. It can be for you all a digital movie theater. It can be a hosting space for pre-recorded content. It can be a learning and a teaching arena, and it can be a meeting place for groups. So how can this platform benefit you, you would ask? Proverbs 18:16-17. Does anybody, and you can unmute yourselves, does anybody know what that verse actually says? No? Okay, so that verse basically says that a man's gifts will take him into rooms that he is going to be recognized. And this is an interpretation, this isn't what the Bible basically says, but your gift will make room for you. So the platform basically is designed for you to showcase your content. You can be paid for your content. The idea is to have you both locally and globally recognized. You can build relationships with the people that you want to support you, and you can also become a mentor. So we have a few persons that are interested in joining the platform for the sole specific purpose of mentoring persons with their expert in their fields, and they want to use the platform, to do hosting mentorship programs. You can go to the next slide. Experts or client. There are actually two ways to sign up on the platform. Signing up as an expert gives you full access to the platform's monetized features. You are able to create and schedule events. You can sell you can sell tickets, set your ticket prices. You have the ability to control which content is made public and what is made exclusive. You can have one-on-one private sessions with the persons that are online with you whilst you're streaming. You can receive monetary tips, and you can set that as a tip goal. That is the benefits of signing up as an expert. As a client, you're able to purchase credits. You can request access to the paid or exclusive content that an expert has on their account. You're able to send gifts to those persons as well. You're able to watch live or pre-recorded events. You can purchase your tickets in advance if there is an event, a concert, or perhaps maybe a movie premiere showing, and you're able to book appointments. So these are a few features of being on the platform itself, and we hope that this is something that is seeming interesting to you. I know I'm moving a bit fast. So on this slide here, this is pretty much an idea of what you would see in the background. So here, like I mentioned previously, this can, oh, sorry, Trevon, if you can use your mouse right where it says tip goal that's highlighted. So at where it says tip, that is what you can set. You can set, okay, so where it says tip goal, yes, right there. You can set the desired amount of tips that you wish to have. Your audience is able to, well, the audience won't be able to see that, but you will. And once you've reached that goal, of course, you'd be excited and really happy. You can do video chats, the next tab right up. You can do video chats, you can have text chats. And once these features are on, this is where you're able to monetize your time on the platform, because you can charge persons to come into a chat room with you or to have a video chat. And this is all optional. You don't have to do that. Anything that you share on the platform, you always have the choice of whether or not you want to be paid for it, or if you want to share it publicly. So I've given you an idea of what you see from an expert view and a client view. So some of the features of the platform are you are able to schedule events. You can, if you choose to host any type of event you can think of or fathom that's something of your interest, you can have prepaid appointments if you're a lawyer, if you are a director, if you want to host a session where you can give some tips, or you want to mentor somebody, you can have that scheduled time for them to come on. And again, like I said, this can be paid or it can be free. You're able to also sell your content. Whatever you upload on the site is 100% yours, and you can put a price on it if you choose to. Desktop and screen sharing. So the platform does facilitate sharing your screen. So again, it's just a vast amount of ways that you're able to interact with the person that are watching your streams or your pre-recorded content. And you also stream, of course, in real time. Data protection. So let's say, for instance, you want to host a movie premiere and you have an upcoming film that you're about to release. If you want to show that for a paid price, there is a feature on the platform that prohibits anyone from screen recording it. So you're not going to lose out on funds with someone sharing, the pirating thing that they do usually when they pre-record and they're able to distribute without your permission. The platform prohibits that. And again, like I would have mentioned earlier, you can host a room after your premiere where you can probably have a VIP session with the persons that are interested in your film. They can come in that room, they can ask you questions, you set the time. And again, like I said, this can be paid or non-paid. A virtual presence. So some of the predictions that we're noticing when it comes to communication and the way the world is moving. The current trends on virtual presence will provide groundwork for some truly immersive communication designs, and we believe that it's going to transcend time and space. The next generation of holographic communication will soon change the way we communicate significantly. The future of technology. With 3D holographic avatars, images, and AI, brick and mortar businesses will significantly see a decrease in sales. Physical traffic and digital virtual businesses will see an increase. So basically, what we're saying here is um, digital communications is definitely a high rising trend. You see a lot of persons that are moving towards online businesses as opposed to having a brick and mortar business for overhead costs and things of that nature. And for the most part, you have a wider um, audience, you have a wider and a very larger scale of clients because you're sharing your content on the web, and that basically is an international arena. So the rise in augmented reality, another set of predictions is it's time that we see and engage with the world differently. Right now, we experience augmented reality through games, but there's a lot to it. There's a lot more to it in entertainment. Real use cases of augmented reality include medical training, classroom education, business logistics, and the tourism industry. And again, augmented reality is an emerging player in the tech economy, and we can only expect further innovations and improvements in this area of communications. In the future, there's going to be a way to automate responses based on pre-written keywords and through machine learning. So basically, to surmise everything that I would have just said, Whatchadoing.cam in 60 seconds, you have free sign up either as an expert or client. You're able to schedule events or host them. You can schedule prepaid appointments. You can sell your content and get paid for your content. You can share your screen and desktop. You're able to mobile broadcast. You can stream in real time. You can mentor like a professional, and you can get paid. The future is now. I love that quote from George Allen, former Washington Redskins. So this brings me to the end of our presentation. Does anybody have any questions for us?
So I want anybody that has any questions, just raise your hand. I'm gonna call you out. Or if you don't see me call you out right away, and I don't see you, you can just start to talk. We know that we've all been discussing the possibility of having a platform that can allow us to monetize our content. Also having a platform that would allow us to reach marketplaces that are very far away. You may have questions. You may say, what is the difference between this and maybe a Vimeo or a YouTube or a Zoom that we're on now? So I want you to be able to ask the questions you want to ask and see if this can be of a benefit to you.
Well, to answer one of the questions that you would have proposed, what makes us different is that we pay in local currency, and definitely you are in control of what you get paid on the platform.
I think I saw Travolta. Travolta, were you saying something?
No, but I was about to actually. I don't know if you sensed that, but yeah, I vaguely remember after we released Wally, my show Where in the World is Wally. I vaguely remember David Burrows at Cable talking to me about something like this, some online platform that's going to allow Bahamians to showcase their own work and essentially get paid themselves. And I guess my question for the moderator, who I presume is Bahamian. I'm sorry, I've never met you before. My name is Travolta Cooper. I'm a Bahamian filmmaker. And this platform is Travon sort of mentioned something like Vimeo. Is it like a Vimeo for Bahamian content? Just and forgive me if I'm sort of in and out. Like I said, it's super late. I'm in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. It's almost 4 a.m. I'm only here because Travon asked me to be. Otherwise, I'd be in dreamland right now. I caught some of it, but not all of it. And just wanted a clear answer as to what this is. It's a Vimeo for Bahamian content. Yeah.
It's similar, yes. Basically, again, what the platform is it is a digital streaming, a live digital streaming platform.
Okay.
You are able to, sorry?
No, I'm listening. I'm listening. I said okay. I was listening.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, you are able to host your live streaming sessions. You can share it you can invite persons to watch your stream. And again, you can share your stream publicly, or you can choose to make it an exclusive stream where you charge persons to watch whatever it is that you are hosting at that time.
Gotcha. So it's streaming, and then once you're done streaming, the content is off the platform, or does it stay on like YouTube?
I believe you can, if you're recording it, yes, it does. You can upload it, and it can stay on your account. And you can
Okay.
also, again, make that public, or you can choose to lock it and have it as paid content.
Okay, and this site is already up and running? It's good to go?
Yes,
Or?
it is.
Okay. All right, thank you. That was my only question.
My pleasure.
I see Matthew. Matthew's hand is up. Welcome, Matthew.
Hey, good night, everyone. So I've already done a quick check of the site, so pretty interesting stuff. My question is really around the end user experience. As someone who may want to sell something on this, how seamless is your payment processing from their point of view? Like, what's the process that they encounter when it asks for their card? Is there any leaving of the site to do payments, that sort of thing, which would be incredibly important from my point of view in marketing and conversions?
I'm going to ask the developer to answer that question for you.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Mr. Turncloth, are you there? Did we lose him?
Well, if you did, then I'll just drop my email, and perhaps you guys can reach out to me later.
That'll be great. I'm sorry I'm not able to answer that question for you, but he definitely would be able to answer that. So yeah, can you leave your information for us to reach out to you with that answer?
Sure, no problem.
Thank you. So essentially, I want everybody to understand what he's doing here and how it really can benefit you. I've heard, from the creatives that it's very difficult to find persons that are not just interested in your content, but also willing to pay you for your content. So that's exactly what this platform does. You share your content, you have content already created, you share it, and you have full creative control over whether or not you want to get paid for it. It's basically the answer to what the plight is for this community. Do I want to be paid for it? If you do, then Whatchadoing.cam is the platform for you. If you don't want to be paid for the content, again, that decision is ultimately up to you.
I see someone is requesting for the URL to be dropped to the site, so I think we'll be able to do that. I went on the site as well, and a question that comes to mind is because you can see everyone's panels, it's kind of like a grid, and you can see the panels there. I'm wondering, how does somebody else's content impact my content being seen. So, for instance, let's say if I had a kids show and somebody next to my grid has a very adult show, and people may decide to be like, well, I'm not going to allow my kids to go on this platform because right next to this, right next to your content is somebody else's content who's probably their presentation is bad and their themes are pretty adult. So how is there any way that Whatchadoing.cam is gonna be able to address this? And is there any future developments planned to maybe help to advertise um, stream content or upcoming content to persons that may have maybe viewed content that was similar? Like how sometimes on Netflix, after you watch a movie, you may see previews showing up that has maybe of something that you may possibly watch. And you might have never gone there yourself, but because they saw what you had seen before, they're now advertising this new content, which allows, I guess, everybody to benefit. What's your thoughts on that?
In terms of, I guess having that algorithm, we definitely have some plans, some future plans. The last conversation I had, well, a similar conversation I had with the developer recently concerning a concern brought to us before. He did mention that he does have some plans for future updates to circumvent things like that, as well as for content, the every account has to be approved on the site. So there is a team that literally sits there and approves each account. So and in addition to that, the platform will not be a platform for I don't want to use the word unscrupulous, but things that are perhaps maybe a little more rated than an R-rated content. But
Okay.
the developer actually is trying to say something. He just messaged me.
Okay.
He's having some difficulty. His audio is having some difficulty.
Okay, so that's no problem. If he's not able to get through on the mic, maybe he can address some of the comments in the chat, and we'll go back over that once we reach the end of the meeting. If he's able to stay on. Does anybody else have any questions? I mean, we're always talking monetization. We're always talking about that. So this is a tool that is now being introduced. Even if it's not exactly what you may want at the moment, maybe you may have suggestions towards getting it to that point. So we just want to get your feedback before we move on. I think I see something in the chat. Okay. Go ahead, Travolta.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, when I think about YouTube and I think about Vimeo and these other platforms, and I think about, I mean, you think about brands, right? Like YouTube is a brand, Vimeo is a brand. The brand of Vimeo for me is it's a filmmaker's platform, whereas YouTube or TikTok, whether it's unspoken or spoken, they all become something. They become the brand has its own nature. And I guess my question for the developer is, it's called What You Do.
It's what you doing.
Exactly. So what would you say the brand is? Because all I'm gathering right now is that I mean, and that was an interesting point that Trevon made about like kids content versus adult content, right? It sounds like it sounds like the brand is Bahamian essentially, right? Like would you say that's what you envision it is for now? And or is it something more, something bigger?
Um, Presently, the target audience is local, and the reason why he has decided to start local is because he recognizes that in order for, and I think Trevon would have said this earlier, in order for anybody to, I guess, escalate to a sense of what's the word I'm looking for? If you want to feel loved in your own home, you want your people to appreciate your content first. I say that because when I look at a lot of the Bahamians who have, I guess, what we would deem became successful, and you look at a lot of the platforms that are out there where they can post about these vets, or we have access to their successes, we have we have a strong sense of pride as Bahamians. And the developer basically wants this streaming platform to be the first of its kind, locally created, as well as he wants for the content that is on the site to be accepted by us. It's for us, but eventually, the larger target audience is, of course, the world.
Brilliant. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So I want to thank you again, Kendia, for presenting this to our community. Um, as I said before, we're always talking about finding ways to monetize our content, and a lot of us aren't just trying to get rich. We just want to make enough money to pay the people that have worked so hard on these projects, make enough money to continue doing the things that we love to do. And if this is a way that allows our community to, you know, because if we think about it, streaming was never the big thing. It was never the big thing for movie makers. It, it wasn't our first option. The lights of the theater and the opening box, that was our thing. And the pandemic came right there and allowed something that was moving very slowly along to just turn into a giant. And now they're having strikes right now because you know so much content has to be created right now because people can't get enough. You binge a
Right.
whole season in a night. You know, so um, platforms
And
like
this is,
yours.
I'm sorry,
Go
Trevon,
ahead.
and sorry, and this is why, this is the beauty of this platform. You get to, outside of what I guess would be a normal, I know I don't feign to know anything about the production process or how long anything takes, but outside of your normal process, you get to have that intimacy with the persons that are waiting for your content, and communication is a really big deal breaker when people are expecting content. If you have a project like you've been asking your colleagues, if you have projects that are upcoming, people want to know about that. And the best way to do that is on a platform where you can actually engage with them, keep them abreast or apprised of what you're doing, and have them anticipate, and that also generates a whole lot more interest in, your all of your projects.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kendia. I think probably later on I'm going to ask you a little bit more technical questions, probably for your developer regarding resolutions and all that other stuff people may not be here for. But thank you so much. I want to send a survey to everyone regarding the presentation. We just want to get some information um, regarding your thoughts on our presentation for tonight. So I'm gonna send that link into the chat box just to get some information as to your thoughts, Is this something that you want to follow back up on? That sort of thing, all right? It's completely anonymous. Just want to get your feedback, all right? So we're going to move into the segment that especially a lot of our uh, I think I see a hand. Leslie is. Oh, that's my cursor. Okay, so we're going to move into the segment that a lot of content creators, writers, or screenwriters really been waiting for. It's the big question that kind of hangs over our head, and as we try out things, we're really wondering, what is the magic sauce that's going to get me into, I guess, into success as a filmmaker. And we always know that story is king. You see, the American market can throw a ton of money at a film. Doesn't have to be successful anymore. Because people want stories. They wanna move along a wide, I guess, array of emotions, and they want to be able to, and they also want to be able to see some things that they haven't seen before and go into another world, kind of escape where they are. So, what is it going to take for our stories to be able to break through and be able to impact not just the international market, because that's our dream. We want to get out there. We want to be able to hit that level of success. But from what I've seen so far, my question is, are we even able to impact our own families, our own friends? And so we want to have a discussion. We want to have a discussion about that. But before I begin, I'm going to play a clip that is talking about Nollywood. And I'm sure that many people are familiar with Nollywood and it being people can't understand it, how big it is and how impactful it is. They started off with, barely any type of equipment. You might be able to hear all of the dialogue properly. However, it has completely captivated, the two other giants in film, America and India. You have cross productions happening all over the place. You sometimes you have the Indian markets and the Nollywood markets just working together and just bumping off the American markets, and it's like crazy because you would have never seen it coming. But what allowed that to happen? What allowed these stories to gain so much dominance? And they're not just dominant in the theater, they're dominant YouTube, they're dominant on social platforms. And now in the streaming age, they're dominant in streaming. Dominant. So I'm gonna play a clip and then we're gonna have a talk and we're gonna kind of get to the bottom of what we think is gonna allow the Bahamian. I don't know if that was Travolta had said Bahama would, but it's going to allow us to develop a unique way of telling Bahamian stories that people can't get enough of, especially our people. So I'm gonna play this clip, and then we're gonna get started.
Films shape our lives in a way no other work of art manages to do so. Two of the world's most extensive entertainment industries are Hollywood and Bollywood, which represent the American and Indian cinema respectively. But right in between these two heavy hitters, another industry seems to be creating art silently, but making sure it has an impact. An industry that produces an insane number of films every year is Nigeria's film industry. In today's video, we will go on a journey to see how Nollywood became the world's second largest film industry over the years and how this industry is set to take the world by storm in the coming years. Before we continue, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exciting topics coming up. Nollywood is the name given to Nigeria's film industry. It is the second largest movie industry in the world, only next to Bollywood. Though Nollywood doesn't bring in as much money as Hollywood or Bollywood, it is noted and appreciated due to its work in much more limiting circumstances. The industry is a significant part of the arts, entertainment, and recreation sector in Africa and the African diaspora. According to PricewaterhouseCoopers, Nollywood contributed 2.3% of Nigeria's gross domestic product in 2016, and the International Monetary Fund currently estimate a 1.3% yearly for the gross domestic product in Nigeria. The industry is one of the priority sectors identified in the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan of the federal government of Nigeria, with a planned $1 billion in export revenue in the coming years. Nollywood film industry was set on its path when the first Nigerian film, Fincho, was shot in color in 1957. Around that time, there were a string of iconic directors who were working on Nigerian films. These include Hubert Ogand, Jab Adu and Moses Alaya. Even though Nigerian cinema started walking on tiptoes in the early 60s, it wasn't until the 80s that the industry slowly began to rise to a higher level. In 1984, Papa Aja's Co., directed by Wale Adenuga, became the first blockbuster of Nigerian cinema, constituting one of the largest cinematic events in the whole country. The movie went on to gross 61,000 naira in just 3 days. In the early 1990s, Nigeria started to take its cinema a bit more seriously. Nollywood is traced back to the Yoruba people's roots, who are an ethnic group that live mainly in the western part of Nigeria and other parts of West Africa, such as Benin. They put on plays as they traveled from village to village. Once these plays were filmed, they were turned into movies on VHS and then sold to customers. When cinema culture wasn't familiar, this was a fast, cheap and intuitive way for filmmakers to express their stories to the public. As most movies still aren't made for the big screen, most of the films are shown on African television, and the primary source to acquire these films is by way of street vendors from Nigeria to other African countries and the Caribbean. This way, many self-made directors made movies with low production value, which was very much reflective in their work. Though the visuals weren't quite stunning, they were made up for the story that was often quite captivating and kept the audience going. The spice that was missing in Hollywood was found in these movies, which made them hits. In the mid-90s, people made money by transforming these plays into movies. The most famous of all was Living in Bondage, released in 1992, and is considered the film that kick-started Nollywood. The impressive rise of the Nigerian Nollywood is not without challenges. Although the production quality has improved tremendously over the last decade, with Nollywood production now available on platforms like Netflix, there is still room for improvement. This is because the Nollywood filmmakers currently believe in quantity over quality due to several restriction factors. This is the reason why a staggering number of 2,500 films are produced on an annual basis. The targeted audience of Nollywood are mainly Africans who can reflect most of what is shown on screen in their daily life. These films are popular locally because they depict the lives of African people more accurately. Be it love, family conflicts, betrayal, magic and modernization, Nollywood productions have it all. But as always, lack of funds is always the major problem. The budget for production in Nollywood are far low when compared with Hollywood or Bollywood. Considering this comparison, some Nigerian films have an entire budget as low as $30,000, whereas the cheapest movies in Hollywood have a budget of under $50 million. Apart from financial issues, other problems faced by Nollywood are power outages and inadequate infrastructure, limiting the movie to become better. According to the U.S. International Trade Administration, digital streaming services and social media has greatly disrupted the traditional media players, as anyone with a smartphone and internet connectivity can produce content and stream online. This has increased customer sophistication as customers now have a very wide variety of content to choose from. Players must continuously innovate in order to retain the attention of customers. Also, despite significant effort to reduce the piracy rate and strengthen intellectual property rights in Nigeria, copyright infringements are still the order of the day. It is not uncommon to see compact discs being openly sold in traffic in some major cities like Lagos and Port Harcourt. Despite all these obstacles, progress has been seen in the Nollywood film and television sectors. Budgets have been bumped up, and better content is being put up. This massive improvement in numbers has caused Nollywood to generate an impressive $1 billion revenue annually, according to a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers. The local media industry employs about 1 million people in Nigeria. While this is only scratching the surface, there is room for many improvements. All this hard work doesn't come without rewards. The African Movie Academy Awards are presented annually to recognize excellence among professionals working in or non-African professionals who have contributed to the African film industry. It also unites the African continent through the use of arts and culture. For example, many Ghanaian actors work in Nollywood, and there is close cooperation from Ghana's film industry in Nollywood. This signifies the willingness of Africans to work together in the film industry because they know it has enormous potential. Nollywood has incredible potential stored inside of it. A little push is all it needs to reach even greater heights. At the pace it is going, it wouldn't take long to be among the big bulls of cinema in the world. With an estimated 1.3 billion people in Africa and another 400 million African descendants living across the globe, Nollywood has a great potential to dominate this market and even look beyond this group in the coming years. There are many business opportunities which can transform the Nollywood industry. These include opening of cinemas in underserved cities, creation or use of technological streaming platforms such as Iroko TV and Netflix to enhance modern-day distribution, training and capacity building for cinematography, scriptwriting and directing, and movie production equipment. Other opportunities include establishment of consultancy service, which focuses on content creation and digitization of media offerings to expand reach and improve penetration rate. If you enjoyed this video and want more updates about informative and trending news in Africa, make sure to subscribe to join the New Africa family. Thanks for watching, and contact us if there is any exciting stories you want us to cover.
Okay, great. So this is an informal discussion. We wanna talk. We wanna get what's on our mind out. So you guys saw the video. You guys saw the rise of this industry that nobody saw coming, right? Based off of people being able to enjoy their culture and see it. They're able to actually enjoy it. I guess my first question to you is, do you enjoy Bahamian films? Do you enjoy Bahamian films? Anybody want to take that on? No one wants to take that on?
I do.
Okay.
What is
Tell me. Go ahead. Sorry.
what? Well, what I was gonna say is we had culture would have had a early in January. We would have had a 1 month screening of Bahamian projects. Some persons I knew and some projects I may have been vaguely familiar with, and then there were a lot that I hadn't seen. Even in watching two major film festivals. So I think that a lot of persons are really investing and putting into their craft. And so they're coming out with a lot of really quality projects, really good storytelling. And I think it's just a matter of the budget to do something that is more extensive.
Mm.
But yeah, from what I've seen in the last year, it's a lot of stuff that is really, really good.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else enjoy Bahamian storytelling, filmmaking? Who gets up in the middle of the night and be like, what a sick jet. I want to watch one. I don't know. Maybe let me go see if I could find Cargo. Or let me go see if I could find Balls Alley. Or let me go see if I could find, Capiz Kingdom. You know? Like, who gets up and is like, this is gonna be my choice over what's happening on Netflix or even YouTube, you know? So we're having a discussion, guys. So let me know. What's what makes you gravitate towards Bahamian stories? Why are Bahamian stories good?
I'll answer Trayvon.
Okay.
For me, I mean, I always feel like we have really great stories. We have awesome characters. Um, and so for me, it's the culture. It's just our perspective. It's and then you have so many different backgrounds, so many different walks of life in this little country. So it's interesting when you get a good story that's well written. Um, I enjoy a good story. To piggyback off of the last question, I don't think we do. I think we produce. Sometimes the films look good, but they're shot really well. Sometimes the acting is even really great, but a lot of times the stories have a lot to be desired, and that's where I kind of fall out. Because for me, when I watch a film, I always see it as a script. That's just how I am. I see the script playing in my head, and so for me, if a story isn't the story isn't written properly, and you could see and it has all of these different questions that you're wondering, okay, why is this? Why is that? Why is that? So for me, I love our culture. I think that we have really great stories to tell, but I don't know if we are doing justice to writing the scripts for these stories. And that's where I don't enjoy them. Yeah.
If I may,
Go ahead.
I think that a lot of this comes down to how many reps we put in. And part of the problem that we have is that it's just very difficult to make film. And by its very nature, then, we're not going to easily be able, even in a great environment, which is just not, be able to put in a lot of reps. And therefore, we have to compensate in some other way. And the reps count in every stage. So even before production and post, where a lot of people think, okay, the film is made in post. Yeah, but you still need those ingredients from the script writing. So I think that the Bahamian stories, like the ones that have compelled me the most, are just people talking to you one-on-one and just telling great stories. But I agree that we have not done a great job, in my opinion, that's just me, of translating that to screen, largely because the scripts are weak. Not all, but we're talking about a sort of industry, a sort of cultural experience right now. And so if there's anything that we can do, it would be in improving those scripts. Now, there's a lot more to be said because your question is about how do we appeal to these markets out there. But the first thing is, just as script writers, we got to put in more reps.
Mhm. Now, Moya, you said that you watched a great deal of films recently. Um, you've enjoyed that process. What about these films made you I guess, gave you satisfaction? What sort of themes maybe showed up? What sort of handling of the stories, or what sort of stories were being told that really got your interest?
It was for me. It was a one. So I may have seen pieces of work that other persons commenting may not have seen. Part of my job and Margot, I don't know if Margot is still on. Yeah, Margot. Part of our job. She's a big part of the film and placement
I
coach.
ran out
Part
of
of our job is to watch international films. For me, the international films are not as compelling. Out of maybe, let's say, 100 films that I've had to watch, I could probably like about 10 of them, right? So generally, when we talk about films in general, in terms of what is Hollywood or whatever, they tend not to be strong story wise. Expendables 4 is coming out. It's the one with Sylvester Stallone, and I was like, where's the story? I mean, we just killing people. So I think story is lacking. Story is a challenge in general when we talk about because even when you talk about Nollywood really ain't my thing. But I realize there's a market for it because they identify with the story. But I've watched several and they're very long and not my thing. Tyler Perry, not my thing, but I understand there's a market for it. For the ones that I would have seen from the Bahamas, like I say, some of them are short, so some of them may be 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Carell, she had a nice series, three that she was able to do 3 episodes on. I see Leandra's name here. She has a series that she's done the pilot for. That I'm, beneath the gates. So those were we had a number dealing with different issues like miscarriage, marriage, like toxicity within, like marriage or relationships or whatever. Children, stuff that may be centered around children. We had several in the film festivals. Janico Pratt did a good one. We had several pretty good ones, but again, they're short. So I think when you say comparing it to Netflix, that's the difference because Netflix are longer projects. So you can sit down and watch a Netflix series for you can watch 8 hours. They're not as long, so you won't necessarily watch it for as long. But the ones I may have seen things that everybody else didn't see. So that may be part of it. But I think story, when we talk about story, a lot of the stuff that's out there in general isn't strong stories. It's really the independent stuff that has more of a story drive. Those film festival stuff that may have that more, tight stories. A lot of the blockbuster films is just basically big names and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
for
know if that,
sure.
that's just my take on it.
Leandra, you there? You able to speak?
I am.
How are
Yeah.
you?
I'm doing wonderful.
What's your take? I want to get your take on story. Are we moving in the right direction as script writers trying to make Bahamian films?
I think that we have made improvements. And I think that based on what Moya has said, because I have seen some of the content that was on television. And during the time, the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture was airing some of the films. And I was impressed with a lot of them. So I think we've made a lot of improvements. But however, I have to agree with Matthew as well. And that is, we do need to continue to really work on structure and the story and make sure that we have a good, compelling story that can stand up against any other international films. I was just invited to Essence Film Festival. Beneath the Gates made it
Wonderful.
to the festival. And one of the things that the festival director said when she emailed, she said, "We really want your project to be a part of this festival, and we want you to represent the Bahamas." And I was really blown away by that because here it is, I just wrote this pilot, but they liked it. And so for it to go to like an international place, it made me realize that all of the time that I spent working on several drafts, because it was several drafts before it got to where it was in the final stage of going into production. So the thing I would say is that as creators and as storytellers, we need to continue to work on our story. And I think too, I remember in I would say in screenwriting class, they would always say, when you write the first script, that's not the final script. So you have to continue to go through your scripts, develop your characters a lot to make sure that you have a really solid character that people can relate to, understand the different acts and the breaks, understand the story beats, and really take that time. So I would say that we have improved, but I think we definitely could improve a little bit more to develop better stories, and stories where it feels complete and it doesn't seem like, oh, well, there's missing certain parts to it. So that's my take.
And who keeps you sharp? Because usually in the studio structure, you would have somebody to read over your script, and for them, that's a matter of being poor or being rich. They can't let you fall through the cracks. And then sometimes they become a nag too because the studio wants to add some things in there. Maybe their experience is saying, hey, add this in there, it's going to work. How do you make sure that your script isn't only good to you?
That's a very good question. For me, I have two script supervisors that I have read my script thoroughly, and I am also okay with constructive criticism. So when I let them read my script, they come back with the notes. And I know a lot of people don't like the notes because they have their heart set on how they wrote the story. But I feel like if you want to get better with writing, it's good to let people look at it and give you their constructive criticism because it only helps you develop. So for me, I do let my script supervisors read the script. They give me notes. I take the notes. And then I go and I revamp the story the best way I could. And to give you an example, I just had a meeting with a script supervisor recently, and they told me they felt like one of my scenes or one of my characters really didn't add much to the story. And in my head, I was like, oh, but I feel like it does. But when I think about it, I remember that this is a saying that if it doesn't serve the story, it's just fat. So remove it. And so I just decided to remove it because it doesn't serve the story any purpose. So I might have thought that the character was adding to it, but when my script supervisor read it, it was like, he doesn't add any value. So, and it also helps the story be seamless because I didn't really need the character anyway. It was just an extra character for no good reason. Maybe I just thought it would look good, So it's also good to have, even if you don't have a script supervisor, have somebody that you trust and that they can read your story and they can give you their honest feedback.
That is a very good point. In fact, I remember being to a film festival and it was a documentary being shown, but he said that beyond the rewrites, because they wrote for this documentary, and it has to be kind of loose, but they had like 19 private screenings just to get it right. And I'm like, I think the best of the best, they are not afraid to go back to the drawing board. Sometimes we get involved in a project and we're like, we just want to finish. We just want people to see it. But you realize that the studio process and those persons that are really operating at a high level is not that they're super perfect. No, they go through tons of drafts. And Matthew mentioned reps. I want to get back to you, Matthew, on the reps because Leandra is saying that she has somebody that can look at her script and that's going to send her back into the draft process. And maybe she has a community that maybe encourages her to write. Do you think that we have a community that encourages writers to write and to redraft Because there's a producer that said like he was going over like 40 scripts, and if that's happening in the U.S. and we're getting like how many scripts a year here, so we're not writing enough. Like, what do you think? What do you think needs to happen?
You directing that to me, Travon?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I have thought about this in several different ways, right? And it comes down to incentives, right? So either you have an internal incentive to be doing it, you're driven, or there are external incentives. Like in my case, I'm not super keen on just writing scripts. I want to do the production, but
Right.
it's a necessary part of things, right? So the incentive for the actual writing part would come a little bit internally and a little bit externally. But why am I saying all of this? Because there are known ways to incentivize people to produce a lot of work, be that in engineering or in the arts. And I think that we should be looking to creating a prize of some sort to help consolidate. I mean, community is super important as well, but I think to help kickstart things and to help consolidate the community around the idea that we really need to be producing more, that a prize would help immensely.
Right. I definitely agree that we need some sort of incentive. I saw Tara on, and I was just gonna go to her because I know she had created a series as well, and it was very different. And I heard her talk about having the writers' rooms and that sort of thing. Because in our community at the moment, we're not. A lot of writers don't talk about how much I'm getting paid to write. You have a lot of persons who own equipment.
Hold on. Y'all getting paid? Link me up.
No, I mean when you look at the skill set, right? You don't see a lot of writers talk about being paid. And I mean, even in the United States, you're talking about writing on spec, right? So writing in the hope that you'd be picked up and you'd be compensated. But we don't seem to have those sort of structures for people to even say, you know what, one of these scripts are going to get picked up. Margot, what do you think? What do you think about that?
You're asking her what she thinks about the getting paid part?
Yeah, do you think it's because writers aren't getting paid? Well, persons who are mostly writers, you would know a little bit more than me because for me, I'd be on the producer end and I'd be behind the camera. If I'm behind the camera, most times we getting paid, you know? So
Yeah.
so what's happening in the writing community as to why the motivation wouldn't be there to put out a ton of work?
I think because you have so many hats you have to wear, because a lot of times a lot of writers are the producers as well. So they're the writer, they're the producer. They have to find their cast. They also casting. They may also be doing their own casting. So I don't know. There are writers, I guess. I know writers who write, but most of the writers that I know who would write and just write is really stage writers. Like they write for stage.
Right.
I'm not too familiar with any film writers who don't do some kind of crew production editing work.
Do you find that helps the theater community better than it serves the film community? Because I mean, if we are producing our own writing, we're gonna go to that first draft and be like, "This is perfect."
I think it depends on the person. I think it depends. I think everybody has access to people that they can, in the same way that Leandra would have shared her with her team. We have access to people to say, "Hey, read this." I think I can probably say a lot of us may have been asked to read somebody's script and give feedback on it. You know what I mean? So I think the community is there where you know who are the writers and you could say, "Hey, can you give me some feedback on this or whatever?" Now, like I say, when you get into a longer project, A 20-something page project or a 30-page project may not be an issue, but when you get into like read my 60-minute, my hour or 2 hour long film, because that's literally going to be how long it's going to take to read it, then that's a different kettle of fish. Because now that's time.
Right.
That's somebody's time.
So I think we need to build some sort of infrastructure to address that, because the films that are going to be on the market shelf are going to be longer films.
Yeah, they would be longer projects. I think though, it's because film is so subjective though, that's why I was trying to say in my last commentary, people like what they like. So some people, the simplistic story that me or you or someone else may not like, because we may want something more critical or something that's more deep. You know what I mean? You have the Jordan Peele audience, you have the Tyler Perry audience, you have the Spike Lee audience, you have the Michael Mann audience, like, you know what I mean? And so they're different lanes. So I think what the overall thing is, I'm a fan of writing, I'm a fan of story, but then I also see that like on an international scene, when it comes to what's popular and what makes money, it isn't always the stuff that has the best story.
Right.
So that's the conundrum. Like the stuff that making the money isn't more times than not, is not often necessarily the stuff that has the best story. It's the stuff that has the big actor. It's the stuff that may appeal to an audience, that kind of thing. It appeals to a certain audience. And that's why I keep bringing up Tyler Perry, because Tyler Perry appeals to an extremely large audience.
Right. Which
But
is a
his
study
writing
in its
is not
own.
the best. I mean, and he is like, I ain't changing this because this would working for my audience. And
But he has a form. He has a form, but it's just,
right. Right.
See, I think that's a really important point, Trevon, that and Moya, but that although Tyler Perry may not have what some people consider to be great stories, he has a form, and he's writing for his audience. And at the end of the day, that's what story is about. So we might consider that there are higher forms, quote unquote, of story, and various types. But at the end of the day, the question is, how well can you write for the intended audience? And that's still a craft. That's still a craft that needs to be practiced. And you got to put in the reps.
Right. Leandra, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think then persons would need to know, or persons going into it has to say, this my audience. Like this, my audience are the persons who are more story driven, or my audience are the persons who like action and who like, who like certain things. And I guess knowing your audience determines who you choose to read your script, and how you kind of move your script through the process from development to completion, because that's part of the process as well. Who's this for? Who's this script for? And they and that's in Hollywood, that's kind of what they do. They target it towards a specific audience, and then that's how they kind of move it through the pipeline. Oh, this is for this kind of audience. This is for that kind of audience.
So on the local scene, Moya, do you think that our film community understands the different demographic of audience here locally?
I couldn't say. Like, I couldn't speak for the film. I really couldn't say. Because I think, like, what I see is people, again, going on the films that I wouldn't even say films, the TV shows or the short films that I would have seen. I think a lot of filmmakers are writing from personal kind of, I guess, from a personal passion of their project, what they want, not necessarily a wide audience. So I think that's why I say the audience, knowing who your audience is one thing, but a lot of people write from, this is a story I want to tell.
Right.
You know what I mean? This is something that I'm passionate about or I've seen it. So they write from in out as opposed to like, okay, who I want to target.
Right. I don't know. I mean, and anybody could really kind of talk on this, but I don't know if anyone has seen our TV put on Christmas in July, like Christmas movies in July. It was like they were like watching, like playing Christmas movies in the summer because the Christmas movies did so well in the winter. They just tried again, and like I saw a lot of people tuning in to those Christmas movies.
Yeah, because people like those Christmas movies.
And that means that it doesn't have to be the season, but people want to watch those Christmas movies. Now, what comes to my mind is what about these films are able to, and a lot of the times they're not people of the same culture. You know, a lot of them don't have no action like that.
It's like Lifetime. Like Lifetime is a certain audience. It's a certain type of film. You know, they can be doing some crazy stuff. Like somebody can do. They can be a psycho. It can be, you know, stalking somebody. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a group of people, and I think it takes time for people to even know that that was an audience who like Christmas movies, and like you say, they figured it out during Christmas. Like, hey, a lot of people like these kind of movies, and so they tried it in the summer. And I guess in trying it in the summer, they realized, oh, this works anytime.
Right.
So it really is just that audience for people who like those kinds of stories because they have a certain flow. Like Lifetime movies have a certain flow. If you're watching Stars, that's a certain kind of show you're watching. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I think it's that's audience, like figuring out the audience. Now I don't think anybody went into it originally saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do Christmas movies, and that's gonna make me some money." You know what I mean? I think it just happened, and so then they were able to kind of do that. You know, I bring up Tyler Perry a lot because I just think he's a good case study. But even with him, when he started, he didn't take off right away.
Right.
He started like he was homeless and he was doing whatever, and then he started doing the Medea thing, and that's what took him off. Now, if you heard him
But
tell
he
the
did the
story,
plays before that, right? He did the plays. He did the plays that he
he was
took the
doing
video.
plays. Right. But even the plays weren't successful, I think, until he put on the costume, because I think he had an actress doing what was the Medea part, and then I guess when he took it on, it took on a life of its own that kind of superseded him to the point now where he can't let go of the Medea character, even though he wants to personally,
Right.
because that's the draw. So some things are happenstance, and so it's difficult sometimes to know what's gonna hit.
Right.
So writing from a personal place for me is where I advocate for that. Like writing from your personal, it doesn't have to necessarily be like it happened to you personally, but from an area that you're familiar with, that you can explore. Like if you ain't know nothing about drug dealing, stay out that lane. Like if you ain't really in that life, right? Stay in the lane in which you are comfortable or you are very familiar with. Whether as a viewer or person, like if you're a person who likes horrors, we joke around with Kent a lot. Kent, like, that's his genre. Like that's, so if that's your genre in terms of things that you like, you may like horrors and thrillers, and so you do things along that lane, and that's what you're passionate about. It's very difficult to say, well, don't do that, do this, because more people like this. I think that's where the challenge would be, like what you enjoy doing versus what making money.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I agree with that, Moya, but I also think there's a distinction to be made between overall genre or an interest in certain types of situations or certain types of stories as far as perspective is concerned, right? And who you're telling it to. So we might have the same base story, but be telling it to, some highfalutin movie critics at Sundance versus the general population in the US versus Nollywood versus Bollywood versus the Bahamian audience. And I think it's an important distinction to say, okay, even though you don't want to make the mistake of thinking in terms of market and money grab. You want to be grounded in something that you're very familiar with and actually care about. You still need to understand the techniques of storytelling and the audience that you're going to use those techniques towards, I think is my main point. And I don't think there's enough understanding of craft to be an adaptable writer, to be able to deliver these stories as it's needed for whichever the audience is, to be able to receive it well.
I can agree. I agree.
So,
Can I just add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do believe that it is very important to know your audience. Now, in the beginning, you might just write and just feel inspired. I do agree with Moya. You should write what you know. Don't try write sci-fi if that's not your thing and you're just trying to be adventurous. But why I would say it's important to know your audience. When I did Beneath the Gates, I knew I wanted to reach a local audience, but also an international audience. So let me tell you what was the problem not the problem, but what I sort of had a difficulty with. I don't even know what was difficulty, but I'll be honest with you. I was writing the script and I knew that, okay, I wanted to have some dialect, but I also wanted them to speak a certain way because if it gets to an international audience, I wanted them to understand exactly what was being said. So for me, I had to decide which words I would use when I wrote the script. I had to decide which words that I would just keep the colloquialism for. So for me, I knew that when I submitted it to different international festivals like Essence and so forth, they would watch it and understand what was being said. Had I used all the different colloquialism and all this stuff, they may have not really have an understanding of it. So basically, when I wrote with that in mind. Like, who am I trying to reach? Like, I literally had a breakdown of audience and their age. And also, why it's important to know that is because when you market, you know how to market. I knew that I was trying to reach those that love family drama. I knew that I wanted to reach those that love little mystery and all of those things so that now I'm finished with the script. I'm in production. We're finished with everything. Now I have to market this. Who do I market to? So I think that's another reason why it's important to know your audience. And once you know your audience, you also know how to write, for your audience. And I don't want to say write for your audience because you don't want to get so caught up in just writing for the audience that you lose your own creative juices. But all of that is important. Once you know your audience, you will know how to write your story. Okay, so I just want to add that.
And if I can say something as well, in terms of what everyone has said, how I approach writing is that I just write. I write whatever comes out. And then once I get it all out on the paper, and then you start to go in, and this is where you use the different techniques. And I guess this is something that you have to learn over a period of time, but you have to know, okay, and in fact, what I tend to do even before all of this is I do almost like an outline of my story, a story, a plot line. And so I follow this. But the thing is, I think once you, and again, it goes back to structure. Again, it goes back to technique. Again, it goes back to knowing your audience, but at the same time, you want to make sure that the story is intact, that the story is stable, that the story has no plot holes. You understand? And then once you do that, then you can go into okay, is it what market am I, trying to get? Okay, maybe I'll have to change this around because I remember even watching some films and watching the commentary for a lot of the films that I watched. And they said, it started out as a R-rated movie, but then they realized they wanted to get a larger audience. So they had to take out a scene to make it PG, or PG-13, and so again, it's just going back to the story. But then again, it's just, like I said, it's just you keep going back. But I don't know if we as writers in the Bahamas have the patience for that, number one, because it takes, like Matthew said, that inner incentive to keep going and to finish the story. I don't know if we have that kind of patience. I don't know if when we write, if we know if it's going to go anywhere. because some of us are writers as well as we can take out what we write and we can produce it. But then you have a lot of writers over here who are just writers. They don't know the film production aspect of it. They don't know how to take this script to film. And so how are we helping them to say, okay, just write, and we will take what you write and we can take it into the film production process. You understand? And so like, even after tonight, like, what are we going to do as a community to incentivize writers to write, to produce scripts that we have a community that can take these scripts and, like how Leandra said, she has her team. You have a community that we can share our scripts and we could, critique one another, and we could, make the scripts better, fine tune the scripts so that they can be passed on to, a film production crew to shoot it, because I mean, it's good to sit down and talk, but like, what are we going to do?
Recording in progress.
So yeah,
definitely that's a good point that you made. What are we going to do to incentivize the process? Because we know that in the production chain, the producers, they're looking for good stories. So a writer knows that a producer is looking for a good story, and they're depending on each other. And as Maya mentioned before, most persons who produce things, they write them. So I think the infrastructure, the reliance on each other's skill sets is going to be an important part of it. It's also going to be an important part for writers to understand the process, as you mentioned, the structure, to be able to do your outline, to be able to do your log line before getting into the nitty gritty of things, and knowing that you have something, or being able to test things out with the audience in mind, or having somebody like a producer that's waiting to see something like that and say, you know what, let's try to raise something to get you going. What's going to keep you focused on this project to knock this out? Like, is there a support system for writers to write? Because if you even look at, who's that now? The guy who puts out all the horror movies, Bloomhouse, right? And those guys, they're pushing out a ton of, they're looking at a ton of scripts, but they gotta choose which one is gonna work for what time, and not everything gets produced right away. But we need to have a good amount of scripts and be able to say, well, these ones could work for now, and then these ones can fund the other ones for later. But if we're only putting out like 3 scripts a year or 4 scripts a year, that can be tough. So I guess the question now is, one of the questions I want to ask is this: what do you think? Do you think the Bahamian brand? Do you think that that's an advantage? Like, what's stopping Bahamian creatives from just writing something about, writing something, story based in America, story based, or story talking about something in Latin America, or maybe an African story? Is Bahamian thematics an advantage to Bahamian scripts?
I mean, that's highly dependent on audience, eh?
Well, there are people who are making stories of persons. Let's say there are people who are writing stories about other ethnicities or other things that are going on around the world, and they're not from that culture. I guess they figure that it's just a good story, and they could pull an audience from that.
In my opinion, a good story is a good story. I remember we watched the film board watched a film that was from Haiti. I think that was either this year, I can't remember, but it was yeah, it was this year, right, Moya? But
Yeah,
it was
that was
really good.
yeah, yeah.
It was really good. It was a simple story, but it was really good. And what I love what they did with it, you really felt like you were in Haiti. You felt with they dealt with so many different aspects. They dealt with the politics. A good story is a good story, and I whether it's from the Bahamas, whether it's from Trinidad, if it's a good story and it's a relatable story that people all over the world could relate to, I think people will watch it. But I just think it has to be a good story. It doesn't.
Margot,
Go ahead, Moya.
I was gonna say though, remember those were island house stuff, so they were independent. They are still not the stuff that you see on, and I don't know if that particular film, if it gets distribution, like how that would, whether they would get distribution or not. I hope they do get some kind of distribution situation, as well as the you mentioned the Haitian one, the Jamaican one. I don't know if you remember that one with the fashion designer, young guy who's the fashion designer.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Right. They are independent, so that's why I was saying, like, the stuff that we tend to see, not we necessarily we, but just the general population tends to see, would be the Netflix, or it would be what's at the movie theaters, whether it's in the States or in the Bahamas or wherever. And a lot of these smaller projects like that's nicely written and shows different cultures, and not necessarily as popular and as financially rewarding as other things.
But I think you have to start somewhere. You have to start.
I agree.
Somewhere.
I agree.
I mean, I would love for one of our films to hit the box office like that, But I think you have to start somewhere, and you build to that. Because I mean, if you look at Nollywood, I remember buying all those African DVDs and watching those. And I honestly, I thought they were the stupidest movies in the world.
I was just gonna say,
but they were so stupid. But guess what? They were entertaining.
Right.
And I would go back and I would get another one, and I would, as stupid as they were very entertaining. And why? Because it was from their point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so they started small, but now look at where they are now. You understand? And so my thing is, you start where you are, and you build from there, and eventually you'll get to that. I think you can get to that place where you would get recognized by a major production company that would want to take your script and say, listen, we want to produce this script. But I think we have to start somewhere. And I think if you start writing, if all in your mind is, this has to be distributed wide, I think you're going to get stuck. I think you just have to write from, just write. Make sure the story is sound, make sure it has a really good structure, make sure there are no plot holes, make sure the characters are interesting. Like Leandra said, you making sure you hitting those beats, and make sure that it's a solid story. Make sure it's a solid script. And we work with that. That's just my take.
I agree with you, Margot.
Sorry, go ahead.
There are just so many layers to this, right? And I think that is the proper attitude to begin to raise a tide, so to speak. But at the same time, there's also the considerations of, a good story is universally themed, but different in particulars, right? So you would resonate with that Haitian movie that you were talking about. The Nollywood movies of yesteryear were entertaining, even though they were stupid, right? There's some resonance there. But the next layer up is Nigeria. Their second two largest cities are 10 times the entire population each of the Bahamas. Lagos is 9 million people, and they are connected into the entire African continent in terms of their distribution, right? So we should take inspiration from them, but be very cognizant that our way forward is not going to be charted the same way as theirs, right? And there's just even more layers as you go along. So, for instance, the good story still, if I get you to watch it, you know it's a good story, you connect with it, you resonate with it, whether the particulars are in the Bahamas or we made a film about the Arctic Circle, but we made it. The thing is how I can get you to watch it. So we still need to take into consideration the market itself and like what we write and how we write it and how we approach the marketing of it is gonna make or break the viability of the thing long term. So it's so complicated, but I completely agree that the way to begin is incentivize people to just write and then have the community there that's going to help to review and revise that. I've seen where that has been started before, but it's a lot of work to read scripts and give people feedback, especially if they're not open to it. And so we got to figure out ways to engineer the incentives around this whole thing.
I want to get Leslie Vanderpool. I saw she came into the room. Leslie, are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, it's a pleasure having you with us. Wanted to know if you had any thoughts on what we're talking about. We're trying to discuss how to get buy-in from local audiences and also being able to break into international audiences with Bahamian stories, screenplays. And you've had so much experiences and you've seen so many things during your time at the festival. I want to know what's your thoughts in terms of what needs to happen to be able to emerge and gain a loyal and strengthen our audiences.
Strengthening the audience. I don't think you need to worry about that at this point. I think, the film festival has been conducting a writer's residency program for 20 years. And Tabitha Ritchie was the only one who actually received notoriety out of our program for winning the residency. And so the education around writing is really lacking. Mm-hmm. And I think that before you think about blockbuster, you have to think about structure. Mm-hmm. And so really workshops, I think, need to be a priority. And even, Bahamians not feeling intimidated by entering the writer's residency program, and just writing and honing that skill. And even if it's not good, you just have to continue. Maria, when we had her script at the residency program, I think that was in 2005, she had 10 rewrites before she made Rain. Mm. So it's just the lack of skill set that's occurring. And there are very few Bahamians that submit to the residency program because they're not sure how to write a screenplay. And many times I have to, assist in providing insight. And then they do write, and then sometimes people get discouraged. So it's like the people that are serious
they sometimes get discouraged, or they see it as a they want it as a full-time job, but of course there's no incentive for them to stay in it full-time.
Right.
So it's, how do you provide the opportunities for people to want to stay?
Right. Right.
Is it going to be consistent?
Hmm.
The consistency is lacking.
Right.
You know, those people who are constantly providing workshops, they pop up every now and then.
Hmm.
And you have to have the educated body conducting these mentorships, this mentorship program.
Mm. Those are some very excellent points. You know, and I'm as I sit here, I'm thinking about was it Woody Allen? And I remember when I was getting into film and reading about persons who were in film, and he would get up in the morning, and he had a time where he would write. He needed to have his orange juice, and he had to have certain things in place, and then he went off running, and then he would write again. Like, he had a schedule going, that allowed him to get somewhere with the script, to get past his draft. He had even times where he would create opportunity for him to get inspiration, and he sit around people for him to refine his characters. And like, he had an aim. It almost became another type of life. And I think, people do kind of get intimidated by it, because they're like, how am I going to get the 88 minutes, or how am I going to get to the end of this? It's so long. They don't see everything in parts. They start writing right away, and they get stuck. And then the first criticism they get, they don't want to do it anymore. So I think it's a culture, and I think the culture has to be informed by the workshops and the opportunities that you've offered here, and the residency and everything. And I'm wondering even now if we have to go and actually start trying to recruit writers, and start trying to introduce them to maybe a writing culture early, before they may possibly slip into things that may discourage them later, and maybe try to find a way of incentivizing it.
It requires discipline, absolutely, but there are writers who are writing, and they write constantly. But it has to be a passion.
Mm.
People do want to be writers, but they also want to be directors.
Right.
And so they don't all want to be writers, directors, producers. You have to really be very disciplined to carry all those titles.
Mm.
And here you're forced to do that. But I think you have to hone in the skill. Before you have the film, you have to have the script. And if you don't have a good script, it's not going to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
It's not about the story. Anyone can have a good pitch and a good story. But if you don't write down the information properly, then, Anika Poitier is a very good friend, and she was in the writer's residency program 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And she's still getting, insight from different agents. And she has, it's constant rewriting.
Mm-hmm.
It can take anywhere from 5 days to 5 years.
Mm. Wow. I almost think there needs to be an organization that helps, or community just for writers, just to keep writers growing, and in a mindset to and I think Farrah Chase, she was doing it, but mainly for like literary writing, and then she was trying to get into film, but she had passed. But
That's a great start. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's literary, it's you have to continue on putting that message to paper and making sure that format is down.
mhm.
So
Do you
if
think
there
there needs to have some sort of there needs to be producers have a role in trying to increase the demand for writing, maybe to allow persons to maybe want to write more?
I think you create a forum for writers and have the writers come to you and let them know that this exists, such as Vera's program. Because you can't, as a producer, force someone to be, you cannot force someone. You can just bring awareness of the program that you have.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any more comments regarding what we're talking about um, pertaining to writing?
It's like creating a community of like-minded people, writers, directors, and producers, and you all three have to be separate, and they all have to go on in their corner and really come together. But it's the workshopping.
Right.
I don't know if you remember the audiovisual program we had at J Comets, Bahamas Antiquities studio. That was, I think, on East Street, near Bay Street. But that was a forum where people met regularly, and they showcased their work. So there are, forums that, like Shakespeare in Paradise. One just needs to write a play and workshop it, and those plays can turn into screenplays.
Right.
So I think that there are places for writers to have a place to display. And Matthew, your theatrical company as well. You just have to find that niche for those writers, and it's so important. The University of the Bahamas as well has programs, I'm sure, but it's making sure that they know how to write and put the idea to page, and because there's a structure.
Right.
And we don't know that. I mean, unfortunately, we pretend that we do. We're trying to be so, we need to find that story. We need to find that story, but those stories come once in a blue moon, because we don't have a thriving culture here with performing arts or literary arts or film making.
I guess the script is the foundation, really. It's the blueprint. So
if you don't have
we have to start.
Yep. And it has to be baby steps, It has to really be, we have to rebuild this industry, because there's really no industry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for so much insight. And I mean, there's a lot of work for us to do, and there's a lot of work for us to get the awareness out there, to tell persons that, look, this is a collaborative process, and the draft process makes it it makes it better for us, because some persons think that the criticism is an attack on them, but in places where film is always happening, this is a part of getting the product to be better. This is a part of refining the story, making the characters something that the audience can latch on to and want to see more of. So I think we do need to implement the workshops. We need to get into the schools. We need to create even little small things like little writing lounges where people just come and write and shoot things off of each other. Something where we can get writers together and to let them enjoy the process and the rewrite process, and even the have a market for them. I think that's something that we have to look towards. I thank you all for coming, and I know we're down to four very dedicated persons, but I thank you for coming. If there's any questions, ideas, comments, any way we can work towards building a community for writers, I'm definitely open to that and seeing how we can get that going, because without that, we can have the best filmmakers in terms of cinematographers, but they're not filming good stories. So thank you all for coming. If there's anything that, as I said, you'd like to leave in terms of comments, ideas, we have our email, bassainfo@gmail.com, and we're definitely looking forward to any sort of feedback that would help us take this industry and rebuild the industry, as Leslie has said. So thank you very much. So I'm gonna close it out by playing a clip from Corral. But the meeting is officially closed, but I'm going to end the meeting by playing this clip that I thought was really, really insightful. And thank you all. Until the next meeting, may you have a good night.
Welcome to another episode, guys. We are here hanging out, and today, as you see from the title, we are talking about filmmaking in the Bahamas. So building the film industry in the Bahamas, which is now a goal of mine after following the leading of, what God has been doing in my life. Those who've been following the channel for quite some time, you know that I talk about faith, family, and film. And so I am in the middle of a huge project that God has given me. And I think this is the first time I'm talking about this project on this platform. But God has given us the opportunity to be able to start the Star Film Institute. And the Star Film Institute is an organization where we're going to train those who want to be in the theater world and in the TV world of how to take an idea from a concept. So they would have submitted an idea or concept pitch, and we're taking them with a team to curate that into TV pilots and into full stage productions. And I'm super excited about this opportunity that we're getting to help to build up the industry, because as of now, I think there are 2 Bahamians who have shows that have gone to get contracts internationally. And 2 for an entire country when it comes to TV shows is not a lot. We've had a lot of local TV shows where they play it on the cable station, but we want to build up the industry so people from all of the world can see shows from the Bahamas on Netflix, on Hulu, and all of those, different places. And that's why I wanted to start the Film Institute. That's why I believe God gave me the instruction. And at first I didn't want to do it. And I don't know if you've ever been in a position or had to pursue a dream that you didn't want to do, but you were doing it simply because God told you to do it. And when we did our series, Easy Love, God told me I was during that weekend, I took a staycation. I was reading the book, Easy Love, the first draft before it was a final copy. And during that time when I was getting downloaded ideas of how to write up the script, God gave me the idea for Star Film Institute. And that was in 2021, so 2 years ago. And so now we're here in 2023 seeing us walk it out. And it's the initial stages. We're super excited about everybody who submitted, and we're going to walk them through the whole process of having a final finished product. But it's a long road when you're building an industry. And in the Bahamas, we want to have our Hollywood, our Nollywood, our Bollywood version. And I just wanted to share some reasons why I think that it would be such a great thing to have that for our industry. So the first reason why I think it's so important for the Bahamas to have their own industry when it comes to film and TV and being on international stages. The first reason is because it helps to advertise our country. I remember the first time I watched Crazy Rich Asians, Singapore was never on my list as somewhere that I would want to visit. But as they went through the different areas and the different, the marketplaces and the different scenery and the different, attractions, I was just like, it's on my list. It's now on my bucket list. I definitely want to go there now. And I feel like that is something that, film and media and TV does. It introduces you to a world that you've never seen before. And so I think it's so important for us to be able to celebrate the authenticity of our culture and who we are. And like I said, there's 2 Bahamians who've had international contracts for shows, and I've had the awesome opportunity of working on 2 of those shows. And we're in the 2nd season of one of those shows. And the producer who is the showrunner for the 2nd season is someone who's worked on Power. So she's from the US, and she was sharing with us when she was watching season 1 and what we wrote. She said what she enjoyed the most was when she was learning about things that we talk about in the Bahamas. Like when they were saying things that we do in the Bahamas, she felt like she was getting like this inside information of, oh, that's something that they do there. Like she felt like she was like, it was teaching her about our culture. And it made me realize that if you're not from the Bahamas, that is such a rich and great experience for you that people aren't experiencing when we're not putting that content out there. And so I think it's so important to be able to share the authenticity of where we're from and what we're about and who we are as a people with so many other people, because they enjoy that experience. It's something unique. It's something different that they've never seen before. And so I think that would be widely celebrated. The second reason that I believe that it's so important for us to share and to build up the industry is because there are people, children in high school who want to, or primary school, who want to pursue non-traditional careers, who don't want to be the doctor, they don't want to be the lawyer, they don't want to, be the nurse or the things that we have told, like these are traditional jobs, and if you want to live in the Bahamas, this is the kind of job you have to do. Then their dreams are shattered. I remember that there was a friend of mine who at the age of, I think she went at 30 to go to school to, hopefully one day land on Broadway. So she went to school for theater arts at 30. And the reason she went at 30 is because she had already had a degree that she went to when she first finished high school. But she remembers that when she had a time capsule from when she was in primary school, and at the open date was when she was in New York in school during her first semester. And so when she opened the time capsule, it was supposed to tell them what they wrote as a child that they wanted to be. And on the paper, she had singer, actress, and I can't remember the third one. I can't remember what it was. I can't remember if it was dancer, but it was singer, actress, and there was something else. And then there's a line through those, and it says teacher and banker or something else traditional. And she said, and so when she was showing us the paper, like, guys, I opened my time capsule and look, I originally had, like, I'm now in my 30s in first semester pursuing a career to be on Broadway. And I'm looking at this paper where I wrote, singer and, actress and all of those things. And I was asking, why is there a line through it? And she said, because she remembers in primary school, the teacher coming to her while she was writing on that paper and told her that you need to take those things off your list and put something that's a little more realistic. And that broke my heart, that not only do we not see representation of people in these non-traditional careers, that there were educators a few years ago who didn't even encourage children to pursue something that was a gift, a talent, something that they felt like they had been called to do. And the final one, which is, I think, one of the most important reasons why I want us to be able to make our own television. The final third one is that media has a strong influence over who we are and what we think and what we believe. And as a believer, there's so much content on TV where I like the storyline or it's a great show, but there's so much things in it that I don't agree with as a believer. And it's hard to watch, or I have to decide not to watch. And it's just like, where am I finding the content that, has all of the universal themes, but also has a lot of the belief systems and things that I believe in. And I think that media has a strong way of persuading people and allowing people to see themselves on the screen and dictating what people decide to do. So for instance, when A Different World came out, that was persuading people in a positive way, that a lot of Black people saw schools that had a lot of educated, people who went to college. And so it was a push for young Black people who didn't see college as an option to now see college as an option. When we first had had the Cosby Show. You know, nowadays, Doctor and Lawyer is, you know, celebrated. But before then, it was something that people thought that I could never even do because I can't go to school. So those are ways that the culture has been positively impacted. And so when I asked, I remember I had a Facebook question one day and I said, I'm asking a question to Christian women. Which character on TV is most similar to you from a TV show? And they couldn't think of one. They couldn't think of one. As you're watching now, right in below, if you can think of a character that you know, the character may have some things that you are similar to you, but like, are they really, really like all of your beliefs, all of it? Like, it was hard to find a character that was a believer and had similar experiences and similar convictions and a similar lifestyle that's on TV. That kind of content, it isn't widely there. And so therefore, I think that if there are messages that represent our values, represent our beliefs, media is the place where influence takes place. And I want to be a part of that conversation. And so those are the three reasons. The first one is it helps to advertise our country and what we're about and let people know what it's about to experience our culture. Number two, I think it encourages our younger generation to go out and pursue dreams that are really a part of who they are and what that God has called them to be. And number three is media has a heavy influence. And I think that it's time for us to have a seat at the table, a voice at the table when it comes to media, and to be able to have shows that reflect our values and what we represent. And so I want to say thank you so much for tuning in this episode. I don't know when we will have a full-fledged Bahamian industry in TV and film. I think it's important to start, and I think it's important to sow the seed, and this is my opportunity to sow the seed. And so I hope that you guys follow the Star Film Institute. I will put the website below for you to check it out and just see where this journey takes us, because I think there's so much that we can do together, and I'm so encouraged by there being so many people who want to follow a similar path. So thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you next week.